Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Sunday Sessions, a casual conversation. So, I knew I wanted to do a bit of an origin story for this very first episode, but I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about, how far back I was going to go. Should I tell you all about me growing up? Should I tell you about the YouTube channel and where the journey started and where it is now? Because we are a world apart from when I started creating content on a regular basis to where I am now, and even further apart from when I actually made this channel, the things that I used to put on this channel to where we are now. So I asked the boss, and Miss Hazel Fantastic said, tell them everything, but make sure you tell them about me. So I said, all right, I guess I'll start at the beginning with little boy Jeff. And when I get to the part of the story where you come in, I'll certainly talk about you. So here we go. This is the Jeff Grant Media origin story, part 1. So I am from the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's located in northeastern PA. It may sound familiar to you. You may know exactly where it is. You may be able to point it out on a map. You may know why that name sounds familiar, or you may be scratching your head thinking, that does sound familiar, but I don't know why. It is the city where the fictional paper company Dunder Mifflin is from. Yes, Scranton is the setting for the American version of The Office. And no, it was not filmed here. A few of the scenes in the opening pilot and maybe in season 1 of the intro were actually filmed in Scranton by John Krasinski, Jim, on a little bit of a scouting mission, but none of it was actually filmed here. It was actually filmed in the business offices of the production company that filmed it. So the offices that The Office is filmed in are owned by the production company that filmed the show. I'd say maybe 75% of the businesses they talk about are real, or at least in this area. A lot of the background stuff is actually legit, like menus, like you see Froggy 101 stickers or magnets in the background. That's real. It's a country western station. That's a real station still around. They had a consult, some lady, I knew her name at one point. I don't know her, but I knew her name, from Scranton, that would just send them stuff. She'd send them menus for local businesses. So like you could see when they would dress it as an office, like, an office building, there's menus on bulletin boards and on filing cabinets and stuff. And they're real legit menus, but like two of the big places that do actually exist in this area, Cooper's, that's real. I've actually been going there for over 20 years. They, when I started drinking beer, they were the best beer bar in the area. They still have a phenomenal beer selection, but now beer is much more popular. So there are other places that have a really good beer selection. But at the time, for many, many years, Cooper's had the best beer selection in the area. Their food is still pretty good, not as good as it once was. And they have removed some awesome things from the menu that they probably should put back on. But they are real. They are still around and still going very, very strong. Also, Poor Richard's Pub, that's real. It's also a bar in a bowling alley. It still exists, it's still there, but yeah, it's a bar in a bowling alley. It's not like an actual pub. People don't go there to, I'm sure people do, but people don't just go there to drink after work. They go in there to get a pitcher of beer and then go back off to the lanes to bowl. They do have decent wings, at least they did. I haven't been there probably in 15 years, but they did have decent wings at that time. There's a lot of decent chicken wings in Scranton. We do know how to make a good chicken wing. But I digress. I am from West Side, or West Scranton, or the west side of Scranton. I no longer live in the city. I live probably about 9 to 11 miles from the city center. If you want to Google map it, I think it's like 11 miles, but it takes me right to dead center of downtown Scranton. I don't actually live in the county anymore. I'm like 4 miles from the county line, but I don't live in the county. But the property taxes in Scranton are astronomical. The city's bankrupt. So, yeah, you don't want to live in the city of Scranton anymore. You'll pay like a quarter of your salary in property tax every year. It's ridiculous. But I digress. I grew up in West Side, and as most kids, I didn't really get to choose the clothing I wore. I mean, I got to pick out what I wore for the day, but I didn't get to choose more or less what I owned. I will say my wife and I let Hazel pick out some of her own clothes. She probably picks up maybe 20% at the store, but being 6, when we say, "Hey, what do you wanna wear?" She grabs sometimes things that are acceptable, sometimes she'll grab this really cute dress. It's just for a baby, and she swears that she'll fit in it, and it's for, like, a 2T size, and she's 6 years old, so we have to tell her no. Sometimes she'll come back with a dress that's, for a grown woman. I'm like, "You won't fit in this for another 10 to 15 years when you kind of peak and grow big, and yeah, no, we're not gonna buy you a prom dress." Or she'll come back with like a pair of $100 shoes that may fit her, but she's 6. She's gonna grow out that $100 pair of shoes in like 2 to 4 months. I'm not donating those to the Goodwill. But yeah, she does get to pick out what she wears daily. She probably got to pick out more of her wardrobe from the store than I did. But for the most part, kids don't really get to choose the clothes they own. So I owned a lot of corduroy, a lot of farmer jeans, or bibbed overalls, if you will. Now we call them farmer jeans back then. There was some denim, but there was a lot of corduroy. And I think this is the reason I still kind of like corduroy now. I'm partial to it. I don't own a lot of corduroy. I don't know if I own any corduroy pants. I do own a couple of shirts, a jacket, and I like when things have corduroy trim, collars, cuffs, things of that nature. I really like corduroy, but uh, probably around 10 or 12 is when I realized that I much prefer denim. And I'm basically wearing jeans and a t-shirt or jeans and a flannel, depending upon what season, since about that age. It was that young when I've developed my style, if you will. I will say the pants have drastically changed in bagginess and also in waist size since I was that young till now. But more or less, I've been wearing jeans and a t-shirt my whole life since I've been about 10 years old. It was about that time my sister found herself stricken with a case of pregnancy, and I took over her paper out. And probably about 12, me and my friend teamed up and got our own paper out, which was way bigger than my sister's. And I basically been buying skateboards and jeans and skate shoes since then with my money. So yeah, my actual style has been about the same for the past 34 years. I will say in the 90s, I'm going to own it. I wore a lot of Jenkos. I said it. I fell into the Jenkos. Yes, I don't know if Jenko, the brand, I know there's still a brand. But I don't know if they're back as the wide leg pants that kids are wearing now, which is a terrible, terrible decision. They didn't look good then. They don't look good now. I, I know trends and fashion comes back around, but this is one that should have died then. It should never have happened then. But yeah, I fell into that Jenko phase probably when I was about 14 or so. It was bad. I know Jenkos back then cost about 50, $60 a pair, which was crazy. That was astronomical back then, especially when you basically had paper out because you were under 16. That was a lot of money. I own a couple pairs. I luckily only own maybe about 6 pairs or so, but I quickly found out that they were a waste of money because not only did they look terrible, they were not functional at all. When it rained, you were soaked to the knees. Sidebar, like a week or 2 ago, we were going into a store looking for a winter jacket for Hazel for next year, trying to find something on sale, and 2 kids came walking out. It was raining, and they came walking out with their huge baggy jeans, and, I was at that point, I think they realized what a terrible life decision they made because they had their jeans tucked into their white athletic socks. Yes, they had their Jenkos, again, don't know what brand, bloused into their gym socks, just their plain white gym socks, so they weren't walking on them and getting them soaked up to their knees. I I laughed out loud. They saw me laugh, and they had no rebuttal. I think they hung their heads in shame because they knew what a terrible choice they had made. But, yeah, that's just how I should not come back now. But I found out quickly that they were not good because even though I did rollerblade, get into that in a minute, I mostly skateboarded, and you couldn't skateboard with jeans that big. You would get them caught in the tail. You would get them caught under the wheels while you were riding the board. You would be on your deck cruising, and your jeans would roll under your wheel, and you would take a header. And then it rained, and then it rained, and then it rained, It's awful, awful decision. They were heavy. They were swishy. They were like the Adidas track pants were also in fashion in the 90s. And like, if you wore Jenkos or you wore Adidas, everyone knew you were coming because you just had that swoosh, 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 swoosh sound. It was awful. They're very, very awful sounds. Um, I did find some of them work well for rollerblading because I did rollerblade quite a bit. But I had these two pair, same jeans or pants. They were the Jenko, I believe they're called the stove tops. They're only like a 18 or 20, maybe a 22 at most inch opening, but they're a chino. So they're a little bit lighter weight, so they weren't as heavy. They're also lighter, so they felt better to wear in the summer, but they fit nicely over knee pads. When we rollerbladed, we wore knee pads under our pants. So they fit over our knee pads. So they're really, really great. And they're big enough that I could pull them up to my thigh to put my knee pads on and then pull them down. But even the big baggy Jenkos and the jeans, they didn't fit good or work good for rollerblading because they were super heavy. Just wearing them wore you down. They'd get in the way. Because they were so expensive, you had to cut them because you couldn't cuff them. If you did, they would ultimately come uncuffed, and you have the same issue with the skateboard. They'd roll under your wheels and you would fall, and that hurt. So you would have to take your like $60 pair of jeans, which I would say is probably the equivalent to like a $385, $400 pair of Iron Hearts now. And as soon as you buy them, just cut them off. You weren't rehemming them. You weren't getting them chain stitched and hemmed. You were just cutting them off, and they were frayed at the bottom right after you spent all of your money on them. And they were still crazy heavy. And then when we were skating in the summer, it's hot in PA. It gets very hot and very, very, very humid. So wearing big, heavy jeans, rollerblading and skating around, not a good idea. So I learned quickly that Jenko sucked, even at that age. The stovetop pipes are okay. They did get some air conditioning, which you fell a couple of times, get holes in them, and they were felt a little bit better in the summer months. But ultimately, Jenko sucked. And then when I turned 16, I started working at the Army Navy store that you might hear me talk about quite a bit in a lot of my videos. This is where I got all of my experience with Levi, Lee, Wrangler, Dickie, Carhartt, Carolina, Chippewa, Double H, Wolverine, Thorogood, Pointer brand. Geez, I don't even know. I've probably forgotten more than I remember at this point from working at the store, but I was a wealth of knowledge at that time. I worked at a store called Quince Army Navy. It was on the corner of Lackawanna and Franklin Avenue in downtown Scranton. If you want to Google it, it's not there anymore. They knocked the building down. The building at that time was over 100 years old. It was not in great shape, but it was an amazing old building. Best job of my life, by the way. Still to this day, lifelong friends with many, many of my coworkers there, two of which are married. They have a daughter that's about a year and a half older than Hazel. They're really, really good friends. Spent a lot of time with them. But yeah, to this day, 20 years later, still best friends with a lot of those people. And even the ones that I don't see, I just ran into a couple of them a couple of weeks ago. One of which I have not seen probably in at least 20 years. I haven't seen Pooh in at least 20 years. I ran into him. He recognized me. I recognized him. Big ol' hug. Haven't seen him in ages. Still live in the area, but just don't cross paths in our daily. And yeah, so best job I ever had was at Quince Army Navy. But I also gained a lot of knowledge about a lot of the things, and that's also when I got into Levi's because I got Levi's for a cost. Yeah, I was getting Levi's for real cheap back then. Um, I would say I started probably with the 527s. Is when I found out about boot cut. So we still had the big fat skate shoes, but we had 527s, which were supposed to be, I mean, at the time, if you read the catalog, they would tell you like a 527 was a 505 cut with a low rise waist and a boot cut from the knee down. They were much baggier than the 505. So we had a low rise, baggy boot cut jean that I can just put on, feel comfortable in, and wear over my big fat DCs. Because until this point, all of the shoes that we wore were like super thick cuffs. I wasn't an Airwalks, and the Airwalks Series 1 was my shoe for a very long time. And then Nike bought Airwalk, and the quality tanked. This is before Nike was anywhere involved in skateboarding. And I was never a big fan of Vans back then. I liked them, but I didn't like the way they felt when they skated. But prior to me finding the 527s, even though I was into jeans, and I bought a lot of my jeans from like CCS and just the mall, I probably had I probably had a lot of 505s, 'cause my brother wore Levi 501s and Levi 505s. So I probably had a lot of 505s. But we had to cut the inseam, or I'm sorry, cut the cuff at the bottom along the inseam so they fit over these big fat shoes. If you're unsure what I'm talking about, just Google like 90s DC skate shoes and you'll see these big fat things. I wore DCs. I wore the Etnies Low 2 was a great shoe. It wasn't as nearly as fat as a lot of the DCs, but I wore a lot of Etnies Low 2. I had a couple pair of Hawk shoes. Tony Hawk had his own shoe brand for a while, but they're god awful. But they're all fat, super fat shoes. And your tapered jean, which most of our jeans back then were tapered, they didn't fit well over them. We did wear cargo pants or carpenter pants. I'm sorry, we wore carpenter pants, which were generally a baggy or straight leg. But for the most part, if you didn't like the carpenter pants, which I had them, but I wasn't a big fan of the hammer loop. We just wore regular jeans, and most of them were tapered. I think I had one pair of Jenkos that was like a baggy cut. They weren't like the super wide. Like I had a pair called the wide load. That was they're actually called, where they're like almost 30-inch openings per leg. I could fit my waist in them. But I had one pair, I think, Jenkos that they were super baggy. But even those were still tapered, but they actually fit over my DCs because they were, even though they were baggy with a taper, the taper was still big because the jeans themselves were pretty baggy. Those were the only Jenkos I think I could ever wear skateboarding, but I never did because they were so expensive. I didn't want to ruin them on my skateboard because you always fell down and jeans always had holes in them. So they were my nice jeans. Um, but when I found out about Levi's, I loved them. I fell in love with Levi's. I wore 527s for a long time. Then I kind of trimmed down. I got away from Jenkos. I think maybe around this point also the Dickie double knee work pants came in, which were quite baggy, and that's when they had the long work or the long shorts that came in all those crazy colors. Think like what Blink 182 wore in the late 90s and early 2000s. I wore those. We sold those. Sold a ton of those at the store. Those were so popular. But I wore those a lot, and I think maybe once that craze started to die down, the pop punk, big baggy Dickies kind of wore down. That's when I started wearing more Dickie pants, like the regular Dickies. I forget the style number on those now, and like Levi 505s. So I got into 505s for a while, and then I got into 501s. I didn't really like button fly until this point. I liked zipper fly better because convenience. It was easier to go to the bathroom, but I liked zippers. And then I found out that I actually do like buttons better. So I started wearing a lot of the 501s, and I get the 501s and all of the crazy styles that used to have 527s in. And I quickly found that they were my favorite style. So I was wearing a lot of Levi 501s, and I was also wearing the regular Dickie cut pants, which are also great. So those are the two pairs of pants I basically wore probably throughout the early 2000s. So that's about where we're at now, the early 2000s. And probably about the mid 2000s is when I noticed the decline of the quality of Levi's. And I will say at this point, I was still working the store. We closed that store in 2007. Carhartt back then was still awesome. Uh, American made. You can get first qualities, you can get regulars, great quality stuff. I still have a few pieces laying around. I think I have a pair of bib overalls that are Carhartt from like probably 2000 that I used to wear shoveling snow outside when it was real cold and I actually used to get snow. But a lot of that stuff from working at the store, I knew a lot about it. I could rattle off every style number about Carhartt jeans known to man. I could tell you exactly what the style numbers were, what the sizes, what colors there were available, and I knew everything there was to know about Carhartt back then. Carhartt right now is garbage. Don't buy it. But around the mid 2000s, I noticed Levi quality was going downhill in a hurry. I also found Levi 511s back then, and they had decent quality still. The Levi 511s, they weren't as trendy as I don't know even know if they're trendy to be honest with you now, but they weren't as trendy as they got. So they still made those in mostly cotton without any stretch in them yet. So they were still decent quality jeans. They didn't have very many finishes in them. I think they were trying to get that 512 crowd that didn't want the taper. They liked the 512 fit, but they didn't want to have that super tapered pant leg. So they were, if I remember correctly, the 511s were a slim fit straight leg, which was the same thing as the 512s, but the 512s were a slim fit tapered leg. So they were trying to just get some of that crowd that wanted a thinner jean but didn't want the taper. So they weren't making them as many finishes, so the quality was still really good. and I wore 511s until my favorite pair finally died, and I tried to replace them, and I bought a pair, and they probably lasted me 2 months, and that's when I knew at that point that Levi's was done for. And that would probably bring us up to around the 2012 timeframe. And then I went on a downward spiral clothing-wise, trying to find things that I could wear and like. It was probably around this time frame I learned that Western shirts were the best shirts. So since probably no, probably even earlier than that, it was probably around the 2008 to 2010 timeframe, I found out about Western shirts, and I love Western shirts. My favorite cut of shirt. Um, so if you see me wearing like jeans and like a tee or jeans and a Western or flannel, like I'm at home right there. Western shirts, Western cut flannel. There you go. There you go. That's exactly where I like to be. But where were we? But right around 2012, I was in this downward spiral of clothing. And to be honest, Levi was dead to me, but Arizona jeans, JCPenney's house brand, they were actually making good product. Back then, Arizona jeans were like $20 a pair, and they were like the quality of old Levi's. So I wore a lot of Arizona jeans for a long time. For like several years, I was wearing Arizona jeans because they were built the way Levi's had been built for like 20 years prior to that. So I wore a lot of Arizona jeans, and then of course they tanked, and I was in limbo for a lot of time there. And it was probably in the around 2018, 2019, around COVID is when I really dug into this. I got to start finding some clothes that I like. And I was doing the channel then. But around 2018, skipped over a very important year. That's when Miss Hazel Fantastic came into the world. And yeah, so Miss Hazel Fantastic came to the world. And at that point, I don't think I had actually bought very many jeans because the jeans were garbage. I couldn't find anything that I liked at that point. But when Miss Hazel Fantastic came around and got a little bit older, I spent a lot of time crawling around on the ground as you do with a toddler and then an infant and then a toddler. And I started wearing out all of my jeans that I still had. So I was running out of jeans in a hurry. And I was buying everything I could think of. I tried Levi's again, still garbage. I tried Arizona again, still garbage. I tried Amazon Essentials, had like one okay pair, but they didn't fit right. They fit all weird, but like the denim was okay. But I never wore them. Everything else I tried, garbage. So it's basically every couple of months I was buying like 2, 3 pairs of jeans. So I was just wearing them out. They were just trash. And then I got linked up with Huckberry, and I started getting some of their Flint and Tinner jeans, and they were nice. I had like 1 or 2 pairs of jeans prior that I had gotten sent for a review when I started doing reviews. They were okay. They weren't great, but they were okay. And they also wore out because spending a lot of time on my knees on the carpet, and the one carpet downstairs, I swear to God, it's made out of sandpaper. But I ended up just wearing through my jeans like crazy, and then I finally landed on Flint and Tinner, which are great. I actually still have every pair of Flint and Tinner jeans I was sent, even though some of them are looking a little bit worn. They're still certainly in great shape, and I can still wear those to work, even though they're a little bit worn. They still can pass for me to wear them to work every day. And then I landed on Selvage, and I think I might have had maybe Brave Star might have been. No, some Flint and Tinders were my first pairs of Selvage. I had a couple pairs of the Flint and Tinders. They had some Japanese Selvage. I think they're Kahara Mills. I don't remember. But then I landed on Brave Star. I bought a jacket first. I bought the Cone Mills jacket. And then I had the uppercut jeans. And I kind of lose track of what I had when I had. I've got Ironhearts. I've got Gustin. I don't even know. I got a drawer full of jeans, probably more jeans than I can. I have too many jeans now at this point, so I can't really remember everything I have. But it was probably around that, maybe 2021, 2022. I think I really got into like reviewing like men's wear, men's clothing, and then I got into the heritage where I actually started doing with wax jackets. So I kind of started with heritage wear, and then I got into selvage, and I kind of think I found my home because a lot of the selvage, even though selvage is completely different, it reminds me of the durability and the quality of those like Levi's that I had from like the mid 90s to maybe the early 2000s. Like I can have the same pair of jeans. I have several pairs of Levi's that are 20 years old. I can have these same pair of jeans for like 10 to 20 years. Even if I beat the shit out of them, they're still going to last that long. They might not look great, but honestly, they look better. I think they look better the more beat up they get. But they look a lot better with age to me and to a lot of you. But I could still wear them after that long. And I was like, I found my place. I found home. And that's kind of where we ended up to about where we are today, really, to be honest. In the past, I will say I did have several pairs of raw denim. I sold Wrangler, the 13 MWZs. Now it's actually kind of hard to find the raw version. You got to dig. You can get them on the website, but it's hard to find them in a store. But we sold them. We had them in the store. And I did try those a couple times, but I didn't understand what raw denim was. They were Sanfordized, but when you washed them, they came out looking like shit. They come out in a ball. They're all a huge ball, and they had all these wear marks on them. I'm like, why do these jeans have all these like weird wear marks on them? They look trashy. They're not, I wouldn't wear them. So I didn't know. Turn them inside out, hang them to dry, or throw them in with a whole bunch of towels. I didn't know that. And they're just coming out in this ball of denim, and I just dismissed them. I dismissed raw denim for a long time when actually it was in front of my face that whole time. So all that time I was in limbo, I could have been wearing Wrangler 13 NWZs had I taken a little bit more time back then. But I mean, this is pre-internet, most of this. Like I got my first iPhone probably in like, I think I started with the iPhone. Maybe it was an iPhone 4. I don't remember. I didn't start the first iPhone, but I didn't have a smartphone until, I don't know, maybe 2012-ish? I don't know. I mean, I had Nokias and I had the Nextel 2-way talk and like the LG chocolate, little slide open one. I like that phone. That phone was cool. It was tiny too. I love that phone. But I didn't really have internet on my phone, so it wasn't like I could just Google this shit when I was out and about and just look things up. And I didn't live on my computer then. Like I worked at a computer, but I worked on my computer. I wasn't Googling things all the time. Not like I don't work now on my computer, but like now, like something, I get an idea in my head. I'm like, I either pull my phone out and I look it up, or I just pop up a browser window and I look something up. So like I couldn't look up like, how do I wash these Wrangler jeans so they don't come out of the washer and dryer in this tiny little ball, all covered with these white lines. I didn't even know that the white lines were the fact that they were abrasion fades from being inside the washer and dryer. I just thought, where do these white lines on my jeans come from? And I didn't wear them because it looked awful. But now where I'm at, I've discovered salvage. I've discovered heritage. I know how to properly take care of my selvage and rock denim, and how to wash it, how to care for it. Even though I did recently have a boo-boo with my Brave Star Gauntlet jacket, but yeah, when you got vomit on a coat, you gotta throw it in the machine. You're not gonna hand wash that away. Nothing's gonna hand wash that smell away. I mean, maybe if I lived on a property with some running water, I could just tie it to a rope and leave it in the creek for a couple of days. But short of that, you gotta throw it in the machine. And I did everything I thought properly, but I still got a couple of abrasion fades on that jacket. But live and learn. So what I want to do with this series is, like this. I kind of had this casual conversation. I had this whole outline planned, and I know I completely went off on tangents and I probably didn't talk about half the things I wanted to talk about and talked about things out of order, but that's why I'm calling it casual conversations. So I can kind of just go off on my tangent and talk about whatever. But if there's anything that you would like to know about me, about the clothing, the items I review, you have any questions, there's an email in the description box down below. Shoot me an email. Let me know. Ask me questions. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation about any topics that you want me to talk about, any things you want me to know, that you have any information from me, anything like that. If you want to be credited, let me know. If you want to remain anonymous, let me know. I'll be more than happy to keep you anonymous. But yeah, ask me any questions you want. Let me know what you want me to talk about. If there's anything you're interested in, any topics, take me to school if I say anything incorrectly in any of these videos or any of my videos. Let me know what I did wrong, and this is a great forum for me to address that. So the next episode, I'll probably continue with this origin story part 2, more of the YouTube centered. journey. Hopefully, I don't get too off topic on that. But, this is just kind of me sitting here talking, kind of just having this casual conversation and seeing where it goes and where it takes us. But again, if you have any questions, there's an email in the description box down below. Feel free to shoot me any questions, any topic ideas, or just shoot some insults at me. I find them funny. I kind of like reading them. The negative comments, I have fun with those too. So drop them down below. I generally don't get upset with those negative comments. If you read any of them, you see them, I will sometimes be rude back. If someone's rude to me, I'm going to be rude back to you. But I generally don't get upset. I'm more or less having fun. So if you want to insult me, I try to be cheeky with my replies. If you take it to a super negative place, I'll generally just delete the comment. I don't deal with politics, bigotry, or just like flat out I know I did curse quite a bit in this video. I usually say a few words in a video here and there, but because it's a little more casual, yes, I'm a 44-year-old adult. I curse and say these words. I try to refrain from doing that on the channel because I don't want to get flagged by YouTube and I want to keep it as family friendly as possible. But, in casual conversation, sometimes I say words like shit, damn, fuck. It happens. I talk like that. Most of us do, but that's me. I'm sure a lot of you other creators out there also say these words. You just don't say them in your videos because you want to keep them a little family friendly and you don't want to get flagged. But here we are. Those are the words I say. Those are the words I use. So if a few of them slip out in these fireside chat type things, so be it. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe you watched it. I don't know how long this ultimately is going to be. Probably quite long. Let me know if it was too long. We'll make sure the origin stories are the longest of the bunch, and we will try to taper them down from there. But stay tuned. I'll have a couple more of these dropping with or without your questions or ideas. I've got a few up here, and I got a few things I'm going to do with the channel in the near future. So stay tuned. And with that, I'm going to go see what Miss Hazel Fantastic's got herself up to. Good night.